myself, I still struggle with it. I want to tell people maybe another alternative to collagen. But have you seen you struggling with IBS when you were younger? I'm assuming you have seen great improvements from this.
Absolutely.
Even taking something as a beef. I think grass-fed cows are a great source of nutrient-dense, bioavailable, depending on the product. Just nutrition. I've seen there are also some plant life. I've recently heard of Irish moss being identical to human collagen. Since we're on this whole collagen kick, and it being a seaweed, I know it's going to have a great source of iodine as well. Iodine being great for the thyroid, and then the collagen for the reparative. Skin, connective tissues, bones, and so on. I felt like I had to throw that out there because
awesome.
I'm thinking if I listen to this and I want to try this beef collagen, myself. But, for people that are going to try it and, maybe have a similar side effect to what I might experience, which could possibly be inflammation.
Yeah. And it's actually... if we were to form, let's say, like a health brain trust of delicate flowers, you might actually come up with a perfect experimental bed. And the reason why Dave Asprey, and I kind of mention it again, is because he went on this quest to understand mold toxins, right? And how they affect our food supply and affect the body, was because he grew up in a house with Aspergillus. With that black mold, and Stachybotrys, which is the black one, and also had a bunch of other mold exposures. So he's like hypersensitive to mold. So you get this guy who's hypersensitive to mold. He learns all about mold. You're hypersensitive to beef, and you learn all about goat and Irish moss, and that's great. And so another alternative to whey protein is hemp.
Hemp's a good one.
I love Hemp Force by Onnit. It's a little pricey. It's like a treat. It's so delicious. But I also do Happy Hemp, which is another company. And I've kind of gone the route of, I'm going to try this goat protein for sure, because I haven't been able to manage the animal protein powders.
Yeah.
So for I'm going to try that goat. That sounds great. But I've done kind of a mix of like Sun Warrior, which is like a brown rice protein.
I've tried that. It's a good one.
So I'll do that one with mixed with hemp protein. So I'll do brown rice protein, Sun Warrior protein, Happy Hemp protein, collagen, because that gets me a little animal, and some egg yolks, from pasture-raised eggs.
Yeah,
nice. And to get a little bit at least of a full leucine BCAA amino profile, and kind of like cobble it together. So I've been doing that for my protein shakes, trying to cobble it together, because my IBS, what throws me into just episodes which I haven't had for years, but is whey, which is fascinating. It's like whey, it's casein. But the reason I can eat butter is because it doesn't have the protein. Like it's
really lacking the lactose.
It's lacking the lactose, and it's just the fat. And yes, there is a very trace amount of casein. And if I am gonna have a lot, I might go with like a ghee, which is clarified.
Yeah.
All the proteins removed. But that's I can eat beef, which is interesting. I can eat beef, and I do really well on grass-fed beef. I cannot eat any milk product except butter.
Or even maybe a raw cheese of sorts? Have you tried that?
I tried the raw cheese, actually from the farmer's market over here in Mueller. And I did a little bit, and it was like, I was okay with my stomach didn't hurt, but I sure got puffy. My abs looked like I was a Buddha belly. And I went from having, I actually took a picture of it because the day before I had I'm pretty low, pretty lean. So you could see all my abs, you could see my six pack. And the next day I literally had no discernible abdominals because it was just that puffy. But my girlfriend forbids me from eating cheese because the smell, is horrendous that comes out of my butt.
So it sounds like it sparks a slight amount of IBS.
Yes, enough that I get butt burps.
That's interesting. I've just never, me personally, I do well with, again, going back to the cow, I don't do well with raw cow cheese. I do very well with, I'll only find it at Whole Foods or maybe directly at a farmer. Mm-hmm. I'll do well with the raw sheep cheese or the raw goat cheese.
Yep.
And then going back to the protein, I think it's again, some people might not adjust to it so well. You're mentioning the casein. I really don't know if goat whey has casein in it or not. That's something I'm going to have to look into. I know cow's milk does.
Yeah.
However, either or, depending on the person, of course, if they're able to absorb these nutrients, has a whey protein, a good source, grass-fed, has a high source of glutathione. Glutathione is an amazing antioxidant, and it's such high amounts in whey protein. Yeah. You can get it in certain fruits and vegetables, but it's in a smaller amount. Maybe, those people that are finding sensitivities to these, I really haven't seen a lot of people find sensitivities to goat milk.
Yeah.
I really want to. I'm talking to a local farmer. I would like to come up with a whey protein that's not only grass-fed, which that one is, but something that is cold pressed, something that comes from unpasteurized milk.
Nice.
Any other whey protein out there comes from a pasteurized milk. Even if it's a great source, it's bioavailable, it's grass-fed, it's still pasteurized milk, and now we're lacking the enzymes that will help us absorb all of these other nutrients, and especially lactose.
And for all you out there, I've coaching a young minor league professional soccer team, these guys know nothing of food quality, and it's a huge thing about educating them. And I was telling them about pasture-raised eggs, and they all went out and bought pasteurized because
that is yesterday looking for eggs. That is the first time I'm looking for pasture-raised. I was like, pasteurized? When did we come up with pasteurized eggs? Yeah. It's bad enough the rest of them are commercial. Now we're pasteurizing them before we even cook them again?
Right. And so for those of you out there, pasteurized, which is the word pasture, and then I-Z-E-D means heated. So it means heated to basically kill bacteria, like Louis Pasteur. So pasteurized is a word that has stemmed from Louis Pasteur, who invented pasteurization to kill bacteria. Pastures, like as in fields of roaming pastures of grass, is a word that means like farm pastures, and that means pasture raised, like an animal is raised on a farm, is that the animal was raised in an open pasture in a natural environment that it's unadulterated. So pasture raised animals are different than Louis Pasteurized. And so please don't make that mistake, because you're taking an amazing food and you're instead buying a very damaged, heat damaged food.
That has a long shelf life, of course. That's because nothing's going to grow. Nothing, it kills everything. It kills your nutrition. Sure, people are, we've got the young kids who don't have anything wrong with them, and to young adults who might look at us and say we're crazy. Man, what's the matter with you? Just go to McDonald's and get a burger.
Yeah.
It's because they're, fortunately enough for them, they're still able to absorb a minuscule amount of nutrition from this.
Right.
But
I mean,
we're talking about being optimal.
Right, we are, and I said to Sumer that one of the places I'm now doing, I'm contracted at, and it's basically one of my primary places, if not the place I love to train, is Acceleration, and their URL is YB Slow. And that's great, because if you look at a lot of the top athletes and you dissect their mechanics, they're actually some of the worst mechanics. And the reason they're fast is because they're just freaks. Now, even them, if they were to come to us, we would call them slow. Not based on the times that they run, but because they're slow compared to what they could be. Why are they not fast? Fast is relative to who you are and your genetic potential. Transcend ordinary potential. If you're setting world records and you're slow compared to what you could be, why be slow? Why? Why be slow? Why be suboptimal? Why not perform well? Why not feel your best? And, it's, besides optimal, it's kind of like Dwight Howard of the, the Houston Rockets now, who's, a big center and has those bowling ball shoulders. Yeah. All that is man. Well, he ran into all these injuries over the past couple of years and wasn't healing. And the team brought in a nutritionist and looked at his diet and everything else because he's a commodity. I mean, he's worth millions of dollars. And he was eating a Costco box. So what's that, 20 bars, Hershey bars a day. So he was buying the large, bulk size box of, large Hershey bars, and he was having them just on hand, and he would just walk everywhere eating Hershey bars, destroying his body. And, he could buffer it for so long because you're right, he could extract some nutrients. Yeah. And he's the genetic freak. He's a genetic elite. And for him, it was like, why, instead of why be slow, why be, why play poorly? And even if he was playing, quote, amazing compared to the rest of, or amazingly compared to the rest of the league for so many years, he was actually not anything to what he could have been. And now they've really put him on a more primal, low inflammation type diet, and he's recovered from his surgeries and playing much better. And I think that's this message with different people with different food food issues, where it's very individualized. Is even if you're getting away with it now, why? Why? It's just so unnecessary.
Or even when you're young. I like to share a little quick story about my younger brother. He's about 13 years old. I remembered him and I going to a local gym back in my old neighborhood in Pennsylvania. And his whole life he ate everything that I did when I was his age. Cereal for breakfast, maybe sneaking a little ice cream after breakfast. Peanut butter and jelly with maybe a banana or a sandwich. Yep. And so he was very watching me go through all my struggles, and then he would see how much better I would improve and become, just super elite at this gym, just packing on all sorts of muscle. And so he's like, Justin, whatever you're doing, I want to try it. So, after our workouts, I'd give him a baked yam with some grass-fed butter. Oh, nice. And, he'd start eating more salads. He would eat, anytime he was around me, I'd give him some good food. And all of a sudden, he went from being, a great athlete at his age to just skyrocketing. Yeah. His results were phenomenal. And now that he's living in West Virginia with my family, now him and my father are really bad with it. They have certain things that they like to eat. Yeah. They're like, oh, okay, well, we don't have any problems, so we'll eat this. And good for them. But I've also seen a decline in my brother's athleticism. Right. Just because he's young and he's full of vigor and hormones. Yeah. Everyone's like, just let him eat whatever he wants. Well, then how comes he was optimal when he was eating a certain way? Right. And now he's declining now that he's eating another certain way. Right. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And actually, so before we kind of wrap up today, I kind of want to go back to your tea. Your tea invention. I love this. So you're using a mushroom. You're using
you can find it wildly harvest. Get it yourself so as you're not spending $20 for 2 ounces. Or I have a buddy up in Canada who's going to ship me some because I haven't found any birch trees. Chaga mushroom grows. It's a fungus that grows on birch trees. Huh. Same thing with reishi. I forget what tree that grows off of, but it's a fungus that grows off of a tree. Now, with chaga, it's got all sorts of wild minerals in it. I'm not going to go through the list. It's got, so many adaptogenic properties.